This is the Marketing Umbrella Podcast, where it's all about getting the information you need from successful leading marketers to build and grow your digital marketing agency. Brought to you by Itamar Shafir, founder and CEO of Umbrella, the technology platform and brand that is powering thousands of marketing agencies around the country. Find him at umbrellaus.com. Now, here's your host, Kevin Pruitt.
This is the Marketing Umbrella Podcast. My name is Kevin Pruitt, and I'm honored to host this podcast. We've got a great guest today. He's an entrepreneur, advisor, and disruptor with 3 decades of strategy, growth, and marketing leadership. He's currently building the next generation of AI-driven attribution as the co-founder and CEO of Provalytics, which is a cookieless attribution and measurement solution which enables marketers to prove the impact from upper funnel channels like CTV and grow their budgets. Please join me in welcoming Jeff Greenfield to the Marketing Umbrella Podcast. Jeff, thanks again for joining us.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me here, Kevin.
The intro never does you justice, so round it out a little bit. What are some things that, for the sake of brevity, when you sent it to me, are there things that you left out that would kind of round this out for our audience?
There's a lot of things in there. I think the biggest thing is that measurement is not something that, I didn't jump into this. I didn't say, oh my God, measurement's so cool, I should get into
That wasn't a college degree plan.
No, definitely, absolutely was not. No, I got into this because I was in the shoes of most marketers, and that I ended up, through a series of steps, ended up buying media for a large company, a publicly traded weight loss company. This is back in the early 2000s, right at really the growth cycle, if you will, of digital. And they had this big
Wild
problem.
West.
Yeah, it really was. And we were doing about 3 billion impressions a month, digital, like banners. That's what it was back then.
You're aging both of us, by the way, brother.
Yeah, that's right. But it was all CPA, which was great for them. But the problem is that every sale that came in, all 5 of the partners would claim credit. That was the issue, so we were paying out, when I came in, the client was paying out 5 times for every new customer. And that was the first big issue. So I said, well, listen, I can solve this. What we'll do is you need to get an ad server, because if they're all in an ad server, it won't be an issue. And at that number of impressions at that time, it was around 90 grand a month for an ad server. And the CEO said, no, I'm not going to do that. Yeah. So I was working on another technology build. So I took a couple of my developers off, and I realized that all we needed was a pixel to ride piggyback that all of them would carry. And then we could determine whose pixel to fire, essentially. And that became kind of the foundation, if you will, for building out one of the first multi-touch attribution companies, which became C3 Metrics, which officially started around 2008, 2009. I scaled that company up and exited there about a year before COVID, thinking 12 years in measurement, I was all done. I was ready to get out of it. And then with COVID came all these new privacy changes that had this radical transformation to the whole advertising ecosystem. And I was realizing that more and more marketers were running into this issue of trying to prove the benefit from the upper and the mid part of the funnel. And this new emerging technology like CTV looked like it was going to be a killer, but marketers couldn't prove it out. And so that led me to kind of jump back in using AI, staying away from PII type data, and building out my new company, which is actually Provalytics. And Prova, as we just discussed a minute ago, is proof in Italian. So this is all about, for marketers, what they need in order to get the proof behind it. But besides all that, there's still a ton more stuff that wasn't in the bio. I was a magician. I was a chiropractor. There's lots of things that go into getting into this aspect of the business, or any business. And it's definitely not a linear path at all.
It's really interesting. I mean, how often do we think, okay, we're exiting something, we're going to step into this new thing that's going to be a completely different journey. And, you just kind of come full circle, because the things that led you in the first time, in a different form may have brought you back, into the same space. But talk about the origin of Provalytics. When was it founded? What was the kind of that key moment, that aha moment that said, "Hey, I've got to jump back into this again," specifically?
Well, it was all of those changes that were happening. There was that iOS update. This is around like 2022.
GDRP.
GDRP, all of the cookies, Chrome was going to get rid of cookies. That was kind of, they were telling us how the train had left the station. We now know it came back to the station, it was leaving again, and now who knows what's going to happen. But we saw this move away from cookies towards like other forms of identity. But the big moment for me was when Google came along and said, we are going to update Google Analytics to the latest version, GA4, which they had updated constantly, and all they had to do was update the code on their side. But they said this new thing was you had to manually update the code. And so what that meant is that for 99% of all of the companies in the world who use GA, there now had to be an initiative to do this. There had to be a project. They had to put money towards it, time and energy. Now, if you're like a one-person company running your Shopify store, it's no big deal. You just go in and cut and paste. But if you've got several thousand employees, nothing happens overnight. This becomes a thing. And I thought, okay, my God, for the first time ever, everyone is talking about measurement, because when I started with C3 Metrics and started the company in 2008, and I was talking about the word attribution, no one knew what attribution was.
Right.
And I remember VCs coming to me saying, what do you need in order to really accelerate this along? And I said, I would need about $500 million, because in order to get people to adapt to a new way of thinking, you really have to move hearts and minds.
Yeah.
But now it was like, wow. And then the other cool thing is that when people updated, they saw a difference. The numbers were not what they used to be. And so that started people questioning, are these the real numbers? And I thought, okay, this seems like an incredible opportunity to come back in. So 2022 started developing the product. 2023 had a couple of beta customers in a couple different sectors, pharma, finance, obviously e-commerce, some B2B, and then started commercializing the product in 2024, and really have been hitting kind of the growth phase now in 2025. It's been exciting. What's interesting for me is that the things about the business that I like now are completely different than what I liked in like 2010 when I was scaling the other company. I like the conflicts that marketers are having internally in terms of the conflicts they have with finance, in terms of helping them connect with finance, creating a single source of truth, and getting those budget discussions going. Those are the things that I really enjoy now.
It's interesting you talk about 2008, 2009. That was a tough time to start a business in any space. I mean, it was, right in the heart of the recession. Did that lend itself to being a little more savvy in your marketing spend? At that time you had to be a little more clever, a little more like I guess myopic, in where you're going to put your dollars.
It did, because this concept of attribution is all based on that John Wanamaker saying, half the money I spend in marketing is wasted. The only problem is I don't know which half. So theoretically, under that, you could actually cut your spend by 50% and your sales wouldn't change at all. But the reality is that what we see is Google has done such a good job with GA4, convincing marketers to move their dollars to the bottom of the funnel. And what we have found is that folks are so far over invested in typically non-brand generic search terms that, and I hate to say this, but it's so true, that it's more like 80% of your marketing dollars are wasted. So you could literally cut most budgets by 80% and really not notice any difference whatsoever. That's how out of balance we've seen the marketing mixes are. It's pretty scary. So 2008 was perfect for that, because we were able to go in and show them surgically where to cut and sales wouldn't go down. And so that was a win for the marketing team. We were showing them how to become more efficient, which is what finance needed during that time frame.
I mean, so many of these things are kind of lagging metrics. And, when you look at it, how quickly can you measure attribution on, say, most of these channels.
Well, that's the greatest thing, because the old way of doing it, was you have to put up tags on everything. You got to tag up the ad server. And then once everything is tagged, that's then becomes day one, and you have to
Yeah.
collect data. And that can take 3 to 4 months to have enough data that's statistically
Incredible,
valid.
yeah.
Yeah. With the methodology that we use, getting data directly from the platforms and your like real sales numbers and stuff like that, we're able to go backwards. And so you can literally, if you have the data all readily available, which most of our clients do, it's typically in a Google Sheet someplace. We can take 12 months worth of daily data and turn it around within less than a week. And then that data, theoretically, it can be updated daily, but we don't suggest doing that because that sets in and it rewards bad behavior. And what I
Yeah.
mean by bad behavior is that most marketers tend to over optimize. It's like, checking the cake too often, or the souffle or whatever it is, or adding too much spice to your soup or something. Once you add the pepper, you need to let it sit for maybe 20 minutes and then taste it. Don't just keep adding it, type of thing. Most marketers tend to turn things too much. So we typically recommend marketers start with a monthly cadence, gives them that bigger perspective. And then we zone in to get down. Some of our clients are at a weekly cadence, and even for some of them, that's too often, but it goes along with their required reporting cadence internally. But you can theoretically, with digital channels, you can do it daily. And with most of the others, like linear TV, they're typically like a week behind. So you can get a pretty fast turnaround with this stuff these days, which is awesome.
There's always the perception of the client. There are certain things that are must-haves and certain things that are nice-to-haves. Does this normally fall in is this an easy sell? You talked about the learning curve being a lot shorter now because people just get it, inherently or intrinsically. So, but is this a must-have or a nice-to-have for most clients out there?
Well, I would say from an agency perspective, I see agencies always remind me of like when you buy a boat. They always say that when you buy a boat, the 2 best days are the day you buy it and the day you sell it.
Exactly.
And so agencies work like crazy to win business. And then the rule of thumb is that if the client's not asking for a POV or anything, don't change a damn thing. And then when you're about to lose the business, that's when you gear up and you bring in all the new stuff that you should have been doing all along. So where this comes in is clients, agencies that are pitching and leading with analytics. Because when you think about it, if you're an agency, you're really doing what everyone else is doing. You're managing media spend for a commission or a flat fee, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And the old way of pitching was that folks would come in and say, hey, listen, we got John here. John, wink, wink, used to work at Google. He's got the inside track. He's still got friends there. And that pitch is only going to take you so far. The pitch that is winning now is when you come in and more than half of your pitch is leading with advanced analytics, and you're honest. You say, it's a fast moving market. Things move very quickly, and nobody really knows. There's no expert in this. All the platforms say they have AI, but we really can't trust them because they have their own vested interest. So we have essentially our own GPS that guides this along. Because what happens is this, and this is what I say to agency leaders, is that if you have clients that you are using and running their platforms and running their campaigns based upon last click, they're not idiots. They're going to conferences. And the reason they're going to conferences is because if they're a brand and they're spending money, they usually get flown out and everything's covered for them. So they don't have to pay to go to these conferences. And they go there and there's someone like me speaking about advanced analytics. There's more attribution and measurement companies now than there were 15, 20 years ago. So they're hearing about this stuff. You do not want to have them hear about it from someone like me. You want to be the one to bring it forward to them.
Yeah.
So the tide is definitely turning along. But I'll give you a quick example. One of our agency partners, they didn't win a piece of business. And there's only 18 of them in the agency, but they were up for this huge multi-million-dollar pitch There were 8 in it. They got down to second place. They got beat out by an agency that had 250 people. And the CMO said to them that if you only had more people working there, like 20 more people, we would have gone with you. But we're interested in using you just for the analytics piece. But they would have won the whole piece of business if they'd only had 20 more people. But they beat out all these other massive agencies because they came in with a differentiated story, and they didn't come in cocky. They came in and said, hey, we don't know what's going to happen, but we've got this thing that guides us.
Yeah.
We can always show you, and we're transparent about what's happening with it.
It's interesting. They probably called him back the next day. Funny thing you mentioned that we hired 21 new employees.
Yes. Exactly.
Just last week, and we didn't tell you about that. Yeah, didn't
That's right.
that. So, do you see? There's so many people jumping into kind of the marketing agency. I'm suddenly a marketing agency. I took a course online, and I have some tools that I bought off online, and now I'm an agency. Overnight, they're just exploding because of the whole space. Is the analytics side of things, do you have a lot of what we would consider charlatans kind of jumping in the space saying, hey, we can measure this for 10% of what these other guys are charging you, and be just as accurate and just as quick and just as efficient, and all the just as, do you see that? Or is this such a kind of a refined space that you really better know what you're doing, or you're not going to last a week?
Well, the nice thing today is that there are platforms out there like Google open source their own platform, Facebook open source their own. It's called Robin. Google's is called Meridian. These do require some technical ability to get them up and running, but if someone actually set their sights on it, they could figure it out in a weekend or so. What I'll say is that everyone out there currently in the space, I would say the vast majority of them do care about what they're doing and do a great job. Anything is going to be better than using Google Analytics. I've always seen it as my major competition is people not willing to make a change. And people are always like, especially smaller business owners, they're like, well, I wish I had the money that these big companies have that I could afford advanced analytics. And I'm like, you'd be surprised. The larger companies, the larger they are, the more addicted they are to Google's stack, if you will. And the reason is, even though they know it's wrong, it's consistent. And in the big corporate world, it's more important to be consistent than it is being right. So what I would say is, compared to Google, everyone else that's out there, including us, we are less wrong than what Google is. That's the way to look at it, because no one can get inside of people's heads and figure out what actually moved them. This is all statistical modeling, and it's really not a matter of whose model is more accurate. It's really, what I find is people that realize that they have a problem. They need help. They can't scale. They can't get one channel working and I always use CTV because I hear this a lot from folks. My competitors are doing CTV, and I laugh at them because I tried and it wasn't working for me. And then 9 months later, I'm seeing their ads everywhere, and I'm wondering, maybe I'm missing the boat. How do I get it to work? The real question is that when you find a partner that you work with, are they helping you with the problem that you came in for? Are they solving your objective? That's really what it comes down to, because the platforms work, the math all works out. But what I find is that a lot of companies want this to be SaaS, meaning they're like, we're going to get you up and running in 10 minutes. You're going to click, 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 click. You're all set and you're good to go. But what I find is that that's great. You're going to have a dashboard, but this stuff only works if it goes to action. And what I mean by that is that for most of our clients, some of them have like 6 or 7 different agencies. And so they each have their own login. They see their own perspective. But if I can't get them to follow our data, then the whole project falls apart. So a lot of this is communication.
Yeah.
and building consensus and getting everyone all agreeing. And this is where it's tough because some of our clients, they hire like the top Facebook agency in the country, and they have people that they're experts. I know Facebook in and out. I go to all their conferences. I know their stats better than anyone. And here comes along Provalytics and gives them completely contradictory information.
Mm.
Says, don't spend more there, spend more on this campaign. And they're like, well, Facebook's saying that campaign isn't
Mhm.
working well. And it's like, yes, but Facebook doesn't know that this client is also spending $10 million a month in television, and it's spending $2 million a month and, digital out of home.
Exactly.
So that's really the key. But this is both the software, the math, but it's also the service aspect and getting everybody together and getting everybody communicating. And that I think is the part that's lost. So I think all of these platforms are going to get you there. The question is it going to solve the objective that you need to fix? Or are they going to be there for you when times are tough?
Yeah.
And then there's always the question of like, someone is 30 minutes away from a surprise meeting with their CMO and they need 2 insights of something that happened last week.
Mm.
Can I get someone to give me 2 bullet points so that I don't sound like an idiot in this meeting with my boss's boss type of thing? So that's really the key is, does this solve the problems for me that I'm having day in and day out?
It is it really is interesting to hear you talk about, because it's almost like, you're talking about two different eras, almost at the same time. You're talking about all the learnings we had in the early, let's say late 2000s and early, 2010s. And then all of a sudden post COVID, the new world, the brave new world, as Huxley put it, that we kind of stepped into is a different environment, but there's a whole lot of overlap, in the two. It's just different tools. And who's your ideal client? Who is, like, if you hung out the shingle tomorrow and started this, who are you targeting specifically?
I'd say right now, the clients that I'm the most excited about are those retailers and e-commerce that are selling across the multiple marketplaces, their own website, and they're also in retail. And when you talk about kind of just that journey that you talked about over time, if you go back 15 years ago, they were selling in retail and they were selling on their website. So on the digital side of things, it was pretty straightforward. They would use Google Analytics. And then all of a sudden, Amazon came along. And now, it wasn't a big deal because Amazon was small. And so they just started sprinkling a little bit of money there. And then they started to notice that more and more sales were going to Amazon. And then Walmart gets lit up. And then before you know it, they've now have this whole separate team that's handling marketplaces with a completely different budget. But the CMO has no tool set to reconcile all of the sales. They have no tool set to figure out what media is impacting what place, how there's a halo going back from like TV to the marketplaces, and the dollars you spend on the marketplaces is actually driving some people back to the website. And how do you actually go in and have a realistic conversation with finance? Because most of the time they get laughed out of there because their numbers don't equal actual sales when you add it all up.
Yeah.
And so those are the folks that are feeling, from what I'm seeing, most of the pain today. And so that's who I'm most excited about. I also like working with marketers whose campaigns are always on. Finance is always spending,
Mhm.
insurance is always
Mhm.
spending, pharma is always spending. And those folks have a huge, difficult time connecting the dots all the way through,
Mhm.
especially when they have much longer journeys. And that our tool set's perfect for solving the problems that they're having.
Is there, I mean, it sounds like to me that it could be adapted to a wide range of, what your ARR. I mean, it's not like you got to be a, 5 billion a year company or whatever to utilize these tools. And if you're talking directly to, say, agency owners right now, where's the integration? Where, what is the 30-second, pitch in the elevator, so to speak, that says, hey, I can make your job a lot easier?
Yeah, the integration, and it's pretty straightforward. We decide first off what level of granularity they want to go down to. It's typically down to the creative level. which is where they make decisions at. And then we get from them daily data that includes impressions, clicks, and cost at that level of granularity across all of the different marketing spend. Typically, this is already sitting in like a funnel or some sort of datarama or something like that. So they'll just send us a daily feed and that data comes in and then it gets modeled. Then, of course, we need conversions as well, which typically come direct from the client or they've already got access to it. And then we can either push it back to them as flat files for them to put in their own visualization, or we'll create Looker Studio dashboards and white label it for them.
That'd be great.
Yeah, so we essentially become a white labeled. We're known under so many different names out there directly by the clients, but when they log in and look at the Looker Studio, there's nothing on there that has our name on it. It has the name of whatever the agency is calling it.
And how long has Provalytics been in existence? You said post-COVID, so.
Yes, post-COVID, so 2022, a couple of years, but really commercialized just over the last year and a half. And the biggest thing, going back to just finishing up, the biggest thing in terms of what the marketers are going to get out of it, the agency owners, you're going to get two pieces. One piece is what happened, because that's one thing you always have to clients is you have to report on what happened. You know, hey, we spent X amount of your dollars. This is how many sales you got out of it. And this is how the channels are working. Here's the top performing creative. The stuff you're already doing right now, but the stuff you're already doing right now is obviously not correct because you're missing that kind of mid to upper funnel. But the most important thing is that the platform will also do forecasting. So you can tell the platform when we run the data, hey, let's look forward 30, 60, or 90 days. Here's what the budget is going to be. And then it will spit out for you a perfect plan that will tell you how to move money across channel and move money within the channel. So you'll be able to optimize that Google search, optimize your meta, and move money around. And then it'll tell you what you end up getting for that. So what your outcome is going to be if you do that. And that's what's really, really cool.
Well, we have covered a lot of ground in a very short period of time here. Is there anything that I haven't asked you about that you think would be good to touch on real quick to wrap up right before we jump into the rapid fire round?
Well, I think for most marketers, they realize that the concept from a finance standpoint of view is that marketers are not good at math. And the reality is that, hey, we're using Excel. We're very good at math. We know how to sum up two cells. The problem is that the data that's going into the math is wrong. So and marketers are trying to like combine these different data sets and make sense out of them. This is really designed to take the load off, be a lot less stressful for you. Let the experts, whether it's us or someone else, do the math for you so that you can do a better job of servicing your client. That's really the key and the reason behind we're here.
The math ain't mathin', so you got to have help before the CMO walks in and embarrasses you in the meeting. So
totally.
If you have no other takeaway, we can save you from embarrassment in the boardroom. So what a great way to wrap up, man. Let's jump into the rapid fire round. This is always the kind of crazy disparate questions, and people are like, what are you doing here? And then hey, there's method to our madness as we wrap these up, and I'm going to ask these questions just rapid, real quick, kind of 1-2 word responses. Don't even really think through these. It's just your first response. Did you get along with your parents growing up?
Growing up, yes.
I love that. You have PS.
Yes.
Do you have siblings?
Yes.
Do you have a pet?
Yes.
What's your pet?
A dog named Bambi. She's 2.5 years old, a little tiny pit bull who's mixed with a little chihuahua. They call her Bambi because she's got these huge ears and she looks like a deer from a distance. Yeah.
I have never heard of a pit bull chihuahua mix.
I know, me neither.
That sounds like a joke, the start of a joke.
Yeah.
Kids, do you have kids?
Yes. One.
What time do you wake up on your typical business day?
4 a.m.
And what time is you go to bed on a typical day?
Around 7:30.
Ideal vacation spot, money not an object, anywhere in the world.
Aruba at the Bakuti Resort.
Very specific.
Yes.
I've never had anybody go to bed quite that early.
Really?
So in all the ones that I've done, it's like 8:30 or 9 maybe is the earliest. So
Oh, that's too late for me, especially if you're getting up at 4.
How does faith affect the way you do business?
Well, faith for me is everything. It's in fact, I was having a discussion today with someone that, you know, I don't have faith, I know. So I don't need to have faith because I know. That's what it means to me. And being, having knowing who you are inside and knowing where you are in the world and kind of where God fits into all of that, I think is everything, especially as one gets older. As you start to look ahead, when you're 30, you can double that and you get to 60. At 40, you say, okay, I can
double
live to
60.
80.
Yeah, that's right.
When you get to 60, you're like, okay, they're doing real good with the vitamins, but I don't think that's going to work out for me. So,
I feel like I'm heading into the fourth quarter. That's right.
Yes. Yeah, totally.
All right. You are king for a day in the marketing space. What is one thing you would change?
I think one thing I would change is I would make certain that marketers understand what marketing is about. Marketers, since the advent of digital, we have a whole generation of marketers who believe that you invest dollars to buy clicks and clicks lead to leads or sales. They forget that we invest dollars to buy attention. And that attention leads to awareness. And when awareness is built up enough, people will walk into your store, and then that leads eventually to clicks, and that eventually leads to sales. So I think I would make sure that people understand that. And I would also add in that most marketers today forget that there is this emotional aspect of marketing that is on a subconscious or an unconscious level. And you look at most ads today and they're all about benefits and price. They forget about storytelling. I think this whole generation has been led astray into thinking that we can hyper target our way to build a brand. Some brands have done it, but the brands that have been around for a generation or more, they understand the value of storytelling and emotion. And that's what I would change.
I love it. I love it. I really love the way you kind of clarified, where marketing fits in the overall formula. That is so, I think so clear. If you really sit back and think about that and kind of watch how, where human emotion comes into play and how we make decisions and buying decisions. But man, this has been such a great chat. I really appreciate you taking the time today and just really sharing your story and just sharing your expertise with, agency owners and those in the broader marketing space, and really adding value to that conversation that is such a crucial conversation today. Thanks again, Jeff. Have a great weekend and appreciate your time.
Well, thank you so much, Kevin. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for tuning in to another great episode of the Marketing Umbrella Podcast, where we provide the information you need from successful leading marketers to build and grow your digital marketing agency. To learn more, go to umbrellaus.com.